This Timberwolves team is so boring. Nothing to talk about. Nothing going on except Timberwolves highlighting NBA All-Star Weekend, them getting an extension done with Mike Conley, leading the West and going into the stretch run looking like everything is set up in their favor. They're healthy. They're playing well. It's fascinating stuff. Let's start with the news of the day. Mike Conley gets a 2-year contract extension. I'm all in favor. Are there any worries attached to this deal in your eyes, John?
Yeah, not really, Jim. I mean, when you look at the number, that $1 million, to me, it's a remarkable bargain for what Mike Conley has meant to this organization since he came aboard, for the role that he has as a starting point guard on this team, for how important he becomes, both as they chase the number 1 seed and then in the playoffs. And to just get that done and get it at that number is, I think the Wolves have to be incredibly happy with how that all shook out. And so I guess we can get into it as the show goes along about, what that means for their financial situation going forward and into next season and the years to come. But all in all, I think you have a team that is number 1 in the West that actually is talking about going to the NBA Finals, and he is one of the very most important players on this team and had an uncertain future. And so to get him done at essentially $11 million a year is just a fantastic deal for the Wolves, and it's really good for Mike Conley to get some stability that he wanted and to kind of remain here in Minnesota, likely through the end of his career.
Yeah, great stuff. He's Jon Krawczynski. This is the Jon Krawczynski Show. This is part of TalkNorth.com. We have a great sports lineup, great outdoor lineup, variety shows. Check it all out. If you like a show, including this one, subscribe to your favorite podcast app. It's free. It's the easiest way to listen. Thanks to our producer, Brandon Morton, and thanks to Aquarius Home Services. We're coming to from the Aquarius Home Services studios. We want to thank our sponsors, Define Destinations. John will tell you all about a really cool Timberwolves-related trip to Spain later on. TSR Injury Law, our longest-running sponsor, 612-TSR-TIME. Head Flyer Brewing, who hosts so many of our great shows, including the one where Chris Finch actually showed up. And Shepherd Goods and Lamb Chops clothing line. John wears the stuff. A lot of people around town wear the stuff. Promo code JOHNK20 to get a big discount. And John will also answer a Twitter question related to Shepherd Goods and Lamb Chops later. But just remember, go to Shepherd Goods and Lamb Chops clothing line store online and use the promo code JOHN, JONK20. I'll tell you more about that later as well. What do you think Conley has left? Because, the first reaction I got from a lot of people was, he's so old. It's a risk because he's old. I see a guy who doesn't rely on explosiveness and who keeps himself in incredible shape and who probably won't be asked to play massive amounts of minutes. I don't see the risk that a lot of other people seem to think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you look at the way that his game has evolved, it's much more of an old man game now. He is not relying on superior athleticism. He's not just crossing people over, getting to the paint and dunking on people. He is a guy who is, for a long time, but especially in the last few years of his career, used his instincts and his anticipation and his intelligence to create angles and advantages on the court, to make the simple play that keeps offenses moving. And I think most importantly, for the development of his game and making sure that it does age well, is he's shooting the 3-point shot better than he ever has. He's at 44% right now. And so, he has become more reliant on that shot over the last year or two, and that will probably continue going forward. But he has really worked hard to become this just knockdown 3-point shooter, and he can do it catch and shoot. He can do it off of pick and roll with Rudy Gobert. He can take it off the dribble. And so that element of his game just makes him so valuable to what any team can do. And you see it, even in this season, is when he shoots the ball well, when he is playing well and playing at a high level, the Wolves almost never lose. And when he is playing poorly, he didn't play against Charlotte. He had a couple of really bad games recently where he's 1 for 11, 1 for 9, and they lose those games. So it's clear that his performance directly impacts what the team does. And I think that with the way that he shoots the three, with how smart he is, and his experience and his anticipation skills, I think that means that he's going to remain a viable player for the next 2 to 3 years. And given that you're paying him $11 million a year, you don't need him to be the man. You don't need him playing 35 minutes a night and scoring 22 points and doing those things. You just need him to be a leader, to be kind of the straw that stirs the drink. And I think he's fully capable of doing that for another couple of years here.
So how does this impact them? I almost feel silly asking this question. How does this impact them with the luxury tax? And as I ask that question, I'm also going, it's a guy who's about to sell the franchise for, billions of dollars to someone who can afford to pay billions of dollars. I guess the luxury tax just can't be that big a factor, can it?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of people that are incredibly worried about it. And first of all, I will say I understand some of the concerns. Number one is we have no experience watching what Alex Rodriguez and Mark Lowry will do when they are cutting all the checks for the franchise. The way that they have carried themselves to this point is that they are going to be aggressive. They are going to go for, the wins, and when the window is open, they're going to push the chips into the middle of the table. And so their actions and the way that they carry themselves as minority owners would indicate that they are going to be totally fine paying the luxury tax if the team is in championship contention going forward. I think there is a realization that you have to spend money to make money. And so, but all that said, we do not know for sure. Until you are in that seat, until you are cutting those checks, until you are reaping the benefits and also exposed to the risks, by being the lead dogs, we just kind of have to wait and see how that reacts. Now, all indications are, both from Glenn Taylor and Alex and Mark, are that if this team is Western Conference Finals, if this team is a finals team, they're going to keep it together and they're going to pay that tax. Every team in the NBA knows that if you really fancy yourselves as championship contenders, you pay the tax. That's what you just have to do to amass the amount of talent you need to win championships, which bring financial windfalls, which bring potential arenas and all of those other things to the table. So it's worth the short-term pinch for the long-term gain that is there to be had for it. If for whatever reason they flame out in the first round of this, playoffs, or let's say they start next season and they're really struggling and they just don't seem to have the same chemistry, the same success that they have had this season so far, they can still make moves next February to get underneath the second apron of the luxury tax to reduce their financial tax burdens and to stay out of paying the tax. You could trade Towns, you could trade Jaden McDaniels, you could trade Naz Reid, you could trade a bunch of different people to kind of finagle yourself and wiggle and get under it. So it's not an immediate concern right now. Right now, the concern is, how do you make this team as competitive as possible to go as deep into the playoffs as possible? And then you make your decisions based off of that. But, I would just say that I just don't see any reason to believe that they are not going to pay the luxury tax if the team proves that it is a true championship contender, Western Conference finalist type of a team. And so, I've just been kind of fascinated by all of the hand-wringing about it. Yes, there are real team building kind of constructs that can get in the way with the second apron. Yes, there's a lot of financial burden on the owners. It's not your money. It really isn't your money. And they have a young enough core that they don't need to go out and sign a bunch of free agents. So I'm just not one of those guys that is that is losing sleep at night thinking about the second apron of the collective bargaining agreement.
Nor am I. I look at this. I don't care about the luxury tax. I don't care what they spend. It's an indication that they are ready to try to win. And to me, it highlights what, I had a conversation with a Twins executive right after the Gobert trade, and we were just shooting the breeze, and he said, it was just time for this franchise to go for it. And I agreed with him. And he said, this could give us a window of 3-4 years where we can actually try to contend for some type of championship. And I think everything that has happened since has strengthened that belief. They feel, what's the window now? 2-3 years of real championship contention?
Yeah, I think it is. And here's the other part about that too, Jim, is the new collective bargaining agreement with that second apron, with some of the obstacles that are put in place on big spenders, like, an inability to use the mid-level exception, an inability to aggregate salaries to make a trades. There's a bunch of things that do generally really do make it difficult for teams to keep their groups together over the long haul. That's a real thing. But what that also tells you is that the days of the Spurs or the Warriors, staying in contention for championships for 10 years it's going to be harder to reproduce those. So when your window opens now in this new era, you do have to go for it. And the window is opening for the Timberwolves right now. And so they do have to go for it. And then if that means in 3 years, it's going to require a step back and kind of a reorganization, that's okay, because that probably means that Mike Conley is retiring. That means that maybe Rudy Gobert is getting up there in age, and maybe he's taking less money, just like Conley did in his latest or in his next negotiation. We don't know what that means for Karl Anthony Towns, but they also have this young group. They have a 22-year-old Anthony Edwards, 23-year-old Jaden McDaniels, 23, 24-year-old Naz Reid, Nickeil Alexander-Walker's 24. Like, they have a young group of players, and we'll see what Leonard Miller looks like. We'll see what Josh Minott looks like. We'll see some of those others coming up through the pipeline, but they have a young core that will be together for a very long time. And does that mean they're going to be championship contenders every year? Maybe, probably not. But it does mean that the makings of being competitive and relevant for a long time is here. It's just that the idea of being championship level for 9 years in a row is probably going to be difficult to pull off. So it just makes these next 2 to 3 years really important for that first initial push toward a title.
Well said. It's an amazing season, amazing thing for those of us who have watched the Wolves since they were stumbling around in the Metrodome, that we just started a show on the Timberwolves in February, and we're about 13 minutes in, and we have not gotten to a Timberwolves coach coaching the Western Conference in the All-Star game and coaching 2 players and one of them scored 50 points. So yes, let's get to that. First, John, tell us about your Defined Destinations trip.
I just cannot wait to go on this Defined Destinations trip to Spain. It's to Madrid and Barcelona, August 22nd through 29th of this summer. And I would love for y'all to come with me. You go to defineddestinations.com, you search the Spain trip, and find the Jon Krawczynski Spain trip, A Taste of Spain. It includes airfare from Minneapolis to Spain. You get a Madrid city tour. You get a Barcelona city tour. You get daily breakfasts. You get tapas and sangria food tours. You get a Royal Palace tour. You have a local guide that can show you around. We will together have some dinners. We will talk some Timberwolves. We will talk some Vikings. We will enjoy 2 of the most exotic cities in the world in Madrid and Barcelona. And the great thing about it is we will spend some time together on this trip. And we also have plenty of free time to go about and explore on your own with your partner, with your child, with a friend, anyone who you want to bring with. Go to defineddestinations.com and sign up to come with me. And I cannot wait for us all to experience this together. I've never been to Spain before. really looking forward to this, and I would love for you all to come with me. Again, go to definedestinations.com for a taste of Spain with Jon Krawczynski. I hope you all can join me.
I want to thank our longest running sponsors, sponsor of many shows across the network, TSR Injury Law. You know the drill, 612 TSR time. If you are injured, we hope you never need this number, but if you're injured, call 612 TSR time. You will get good help. They will steer you in the right direction. If they can't help you, likely they will be able to help you. They will not charge you unless they win your case. They win a lot of cases. That's why they're such a great success story. Just remember, 612 TSR time. All right, let's get to the All-Star game, the All-Star weekend. What struck you most about the Timberwolves experience there?
Yeah, it was cool. I was there for 3 days in Indianapolis, and we got to see Karl Anthony Towns go to second place in the 3-point contest. Anthony Edwards' run through the skills competition was a little less impressive. He clearly did not take it seriously, but then, the game itself was what it was. It was kind of a farce, and it's been that way for a couple of years. But I will tell you, Jim, that the thing that did stick out to me the most is I did see a different side of Chris Finch. And what we saw in Indianapolis was a coach who was able to stop and smell the roses a little bit. Here's his team, number 1 in the West. They've had a lot of success. And just 3 years ago, he was parachuting in the middle of a season in which the team started 7-29, and Finch didn't know anyone and was trying to get his bearings and just trying to get this team to compete at all. And now here he was with Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns and his entire coaching staff. And they were really kind of one of the featured parts of All-Star Weekend. And so you could see in Finch that, this guy who has not been a sentimental coach, not been one to just kind of like look at the larger picture a lot of times and just really kind of let it sink in. I think he let it sink in this weekend. There was a moment right before the game, Julius Erving was sitting right next to the West bench. And as we found out from Chris Finch's guest appearance on with us at Head Flyer a few weeks ago, Dr. J is like his boyhood hero, his idol. And Finch asked him for a photograph. It's the first time that he's been able to do that since he's been in the NBA. And he got a picture with Dr. J. And afterward, he was telling us about it and just like how he felt like a kid walking into the locker room with LeBron James and Steph Curry and Kevin Durant and all of these stars, and then taking a moment to enjoy it with Ant and with Kat. And I just thought it was a really interesting and cool thing to see this coach who is really grinding and trying to get this team to win as much as possible in the moment, be able to take a breath, look around, and enjoy some of the fruits of their labor.
That's great to hear. I've liked Finch all along. I thought he was a good coach all along, and I think he deserves to enjoy this moment. I think he's worthy of this. And as we saw at Head Flyer when he came out, you know him better than I do. You've known him longer than I have, but I've always had a good sense of him as a human. And when he came out to Head Flyer and just act like one of just an average guy who wasn't in any rush, frankly, an NBA coach probably it just has no business going to a local brewery on a Saturday night between games in a season like this. And he was coming off a tough loss, and he just, he didn't try to back out of it. He didn't try to rush through it. And so I do think he's a very endearing figure. And I hope Timberwolves fans recognize that, because sometimes fans can only see, can't see past the last loss.
Yeah. I mean, yes, I think he is one of the most well-adjusted human beings in the coaching spot that you'll ever run into. He is not kind of the glory hound type of guy. He doesn't have a huge ego. But that, it's an interesting dichotomy for him, because there is the everyday mentality that he carries with him, and he's just one of the regular guys, but also there is this very much this real competitiveness inside of him. And one of the sayings that he tells people around him is, the more we win, the more I want to win. And so there's a real hunger and a drive for him that when he gets into the middle of a season and either they are winning, then he's pushing harder to keep that winning going, or if they're losing and having some struggles, he's really, he's feeling it and he's going through it. And so I think that it was really beneficial for him to be able to take a few days and just like go to the biggest spectacle in the season for the NBA, and have a bunch of people coming up to him and saying, "Wow, you're doing a hell of a job," and "Hey, this is really cool to see a team that has not had much success for very long, have a chance to be right in the mix." And then, he and I talked, for a story at The Athletic, just looking back on his first days in the job. And he told me about how every All-Star game, every All-Star weekend in his previous 10 years as an assistant, he would go with a group of friends to Boca Grande, Florida, and just like, kind of take a little breather, have some fun, enjoy the water, relax and have a good time. And, so he got hired 5 games before the All-Star break in 2021. And all of his friends gathered with him at his house in Tampa, St. Pete area. And you thought it was going to be another celebration. After 10 years, he's finally got his head coaching job, and this is going to be so much fun. And he told me that during that All-Star break, because they had went 0-5 going into that All-Star break, he was kind of withdrawn from the party and just saying, "Are we ever going to win another game?" Like, that's what he was thinking at the time because of how poorly it had gone in his first 5 games. And so he was at that point, and now 3 years later, just 3 years later, he and Karl-Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards are number 1 in the West and in the All-Star game and in All-Star weekend together. I just thought you could tell that he was reflecting a little bit, that he was looking back at how far they'd come and how appreciative he was of Towns and Edwards for accepting him in a very adverse situation. I think that was good for him, and it was really it was cool to see him soak it up a little bit.
No doubt about it. All right, on to, once again, Karl-Anthony Towns scored 50 points in an All-Star game, and he's going to be in the 3rd segment. That's how this season is going. We will get to that and what the stretch run looks like for the Timberwolves. Right now, though, we want to thank Head Flyer Brewing. But first, tell us more about Shepherd Goods and Lamb Chops clothing line and the promo code JohnK20.
Yeah, Shepherd Goods, Lamb Chops clothing line. You've all seen Jordan Dye courtside at Wolves games, very animated, colorful hair, barking at referees, talking a little smack with opponents, encouraging the Wolves players. And he, along with some of his friends and coworkers, have had Lamb Chops clothing line for years now. And it really is kind of starting to really make a come up. They have a collaboration with the Timberwolves, and that has been sold. And they have pop-up stores kind of going all around the city. They'll have just a super cool Letterman's jacket that is available, a Wolves Letterman's jacket that's available on occasion at Target Center. They're high quality, super comfortable clothes, sweatpants, hoodies. I love their shorts. Their shorts are some of the most comfortable and high quality that I've ever worn in my life. And they just do a great job of making very accessible but very stylish clothes that you can wear on so many different occasions. And so you can go to sglambchops.com and look at their inventory. Use the promo code JohnK20, JONK20 for 20% off your order at Lamb Chops, and just check it out. If you're looking for comfortable, high quality, reasonably priced clothing, that is the place to be. And especially for a company and a group that supports the local teams, that is visible there, that wants to be involved in the community. It's a great group to get behind. SG Lamb Chops at SG Lamb Chops on Instagram and sglambchops.com.
Now, tell us about Head Flyer Brewing. Of course, people know about Head Flyer Brewing, but tell us more about Head Flyer Brewing.
Yeah, a lot of people thankfully know about Head Flyer Brewing because they came to our live show with Chris Finch in Northeast Minneapolis, Hennepin Avenue. If Chris Finch wants to go to Head Flyer Brewing, you should also want to go to Head Flyer Brewing. It's got great beer. It has a great atmosphere, a super open tap room. They have flat screen TVs everywhere. They want to be a destination for you to watch Timberwolves games, to cheer on the Wolves, to buy some of their super cool T-shirts and merch that they have that are kind of dedicated and designed and around the local teams, all of the local teams, and they have also super friendly bartenders and pourers. Their owners Neil and Nate and everyone are just great to work with. So as I've said before, I was a customer and a fan of Head Flyer long before we had any kind of business relationship with them here at Talk North, because it's just really good beer and it's a really cool place to hang out and enjoy it. We are getting to have warmer temperatures. We're going to start brewing another batch of Crunch Time beer to get going here this spring. So keep an eye out for all of that. But most of all, if you stop into Head Flyer, tell them Jon Krawczynski sent you, and enjoy a beer and watch some Wolves at Head Flyer Brewing.
Yep. Thanks to Head Flyer. Thanks to all of our sponsors. We do appreciate it. This is how we make this network thrive, is with listeners and sponsors. So thank all of you. We do appreciate it. Okay, so Karl-Anthony Towns scores 50 in an All-Star game. I know the game was a farce, but to me, I thought this was a really endearing moment. You and I have talked about it a long time. A lot of Minnesotans do not like Karl-Anthony Towns, or they don't like aspects of him or his behavior or his game or the way he talks, during the offseason, whatever they don't like. There are a lot of people who don't like him. You and I know him to be a very good human being who is liked and respected throughout this organization. So I thought it was a really cool thing that Karl-Anthony Towns ended up scoring 50 points in an All-Star game.
I did too, Jim. He talked after the game about what it kind of meant for him to be back here after last season when he missed so much time with the calf injury, when he was really adapting to the Rudy Gobert situation and moving to a new position, just kind of grinding through things the way that he did. I think it really resonated with him that he was able to perform at a level this season and get the team winning to a level where he was able to gain the recognition of being an all-star, this time as a power forward, not as a center, recognized, I think, a little bit more for impacting winning on this team rather than for just the gaudy stats that he would put up in the past. And so you have that aspect of it. And then you have the aspect of him scoring 50 points. He was 5 points away from the record for an All-Star game. And, it's just like it totally boggles my mind because he still gets all this hate. Well, there was 200 points scored in the game. So who cares about 50 and all those things? You score 50 points in an All-Star game. It's a incredible feat. And the other thing is a lot of the players got rightfully raked for sort of the lack of effort in that game. Karl-Anthony Towns was one of the few on the Western Conference that was just actually trying. Like, he was giving it a real effort offensively, trying to score. He's throwing down crazy dunks, running the floor, getting to the basket. And I think that he was just putting in effort and he got rewarded for it. I think the rest of his team looked at it and said, hey, this guy wants to play. This guy wants to get after it a little bit. Let's feed him the ball. Let's get him 35 shots like they did. And he took it and he scored 50, and good for him. Like, I would just say good for him. He enjoyed it. He soaked up the moment. And he put up an enormous number. Whether one team scored 200 or one team scored 90, I think 50 is a significant moment for him. And just in the bigger picture of where he is as a player, of where the Wolves are as a team, I think that he deserved to have that moment. And I liked seeing the smile on his face and what it meant to him to be able to deliver it.
No doubt. Again, this is a remarkable season. This is a really historic moment for this franchise that we've rightfully beat up for so long. They're doing so many things right now. They're number one in the West coming out of the All-Star game. The schedule is pretty favorable. They're healthy. They've already added what we thought they needed, which is a backup point guard who can shoot. What does the stretch run look like to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some really advantageous things for the Timberwolves coming out of the stretch. They are now going to start a 20. Here's, first of all, let's just get to this. It is not the second half of the season. The halfway mark is long gone. They have 27 games left. That is not a whole lot left to go and chase down this number one seed. They are a game and a half ahead of the Thunder. So it's a very tight race for that top seed, but a lot of things do break in their favor, including starting the stretch run, we'll call it, out of the All-Star break with 7 straight home games. They have, of their 27 games left, they have 17 at home and 10 on the road. So that in of itself, the schedule breaks well for them. I think the All-Star break came at a great time for them. Mike Conley gets a little bit of rest to kind of get some juice back in his legs. Monte Morris stayed in Minnesota during the break for the most part, so he could get some workouts in and sort of get back, keep getting back into shape after missing so much time with his quad injury in Detroit, and kind of getting onto the same page here. So that's good. I think Rudy Gobert getting this, just put his feet in the sand for a little bit, was probably good for mind and body. So they should be pretty refreshed coming out of it. And they're going to be playing a schedule that breaks largely in their favor. They'll have a long road trip right after their long homestand. But other than that, the opportunity is going to be there for them. And so if they can continue and use these last 27 games to continue to refine the offense, work on their late game execution, get on the same page in the fourth quarters, then they're going to be very, very dangerous in the playoffs. But I think that's got to be priority number one. Get your offense in check, especially in the fourth quarters, because that is really the only thing holding them back from being a team that can say, we're a favorite to go to the NBA Finals.
What is the key to their fourth quarter offense and flow?
A lot of it is shot selection and decision making. And one of the issues that this team does run into is that their two best offensive players, Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns, have historically not been the greatest decision makers. They turn the ball over a little too much. They don't read the defenses. They kind of can pound the air out of the ball and drive into traffic, which either brings a very contested, difficult shot or a turnover. And so what we saw in like the last 4 to 5 games before they went into the break, they won 4 in a row. They won like 7 of 9. And I think what you started to see was Towns and Edwards making the simple play more often and not trying to make it harder on themselves and their team by trying to do the spectacular. And so that requires quite a bit of discipline to do that, because they are so physically talented that they want to show things off a little bit. They want to have the highlights. They want to be able to just, when they see someone in front of them, they rightfully think that they can beat them one-on-one. And sometimes that works, but I think the key is going to be trusting that if they make simple plays, if they make quick passes, that the ball will come back to them in more advantageous positions and less likely to have a turnover or have a really tough contested shot. And so if they can make the game easier on themselves, they will make the game easier on their teammates. And the ball is going to be in their hands a lot late in games. And they're just going to have to learn and improve in how they handle those situations individually and playing more as a collective unit for them to take the steps that they need to take in that area.
We could talk about this week in Wolves history for hours. We're not going to do that to you. We're going to save some for the rest of the season. In the off season, we have so much we're going to be able to talk about with this team. It's been a fascinating season. It's been a lot of fun. You know, John, covering sports is supposed to be fun. It's not always fun. This team has been fun to cover. Now let's wrap up this show with with your. I'm sorry, I'm stumbling with your Twitter question.
Yeah. So every week on the Jon Krawczynski Show, courtesy of Shepherd Goods and Lamb Chops Clothing, we do a Twitter question, and I solicited on Twitter at Jon Krawczynski. And if I pick your question to answer, then I watch your DMs on Twitter, and we will link you with SG Lamb Chops Twitter account, and they will get you a free beanie for these hopefully these last few days of winter to keep you warm. Also a reminder, use the promo code JONK20, JONK20 at sglambchops.com for 20% off any of their merchandise there. But this week's question comes from Ryan Colson, and he says, would you say that the Mike Conley extension and how much of a steal it is further supports the statement that there has been a culture shift in the Minnesota Timberwolves? And I do think Ryan is onto something here, because the way that Mike Conley has played for the first year and a half for the first year of his stay in Minnesota, he earned more than $22 million on a 2-year extension. And so there have been numerous scenarios over the course of the 20 years that I've been covering this team where if the Timberwolves could not pay a player a premium to either come in free agency or stay on their team, that player was gone. They had no interest in sticking around here for cold winters and losing games and revolving doors and GM and head coach and all of those other things. And so for Mike Conley to look at the landscape of the NBA, to look at what the Timberwolves have going and decide, I am going to take an offer that is probably not maximizing every single dollar that I could get, and to stay here, that does say a lot about the organization. He is at this stage of his career, he's talked about it with me, saying that he didn't want to get into a situation where he was puddle jumping at the end of his career to chase rings, because he has a young family. He doesn't want to pick them up and move them a bunch of times. He wanted this to work out in Minnesota for the long haul, but it did not guarantee that it was going to. And now when you look at from a family life, I think they really like living in Minnesota. They have a great house in the suburbs. Their kids are in schools and in sports. His wife Mary is meeting friends and becoming very social, and Mike has settled in here as well. So that all the style, the quality of life is good for them. But I think most importantly in driving his decision on taking this deal was that he has a starting role on a very, very competitive team, which I think that there weren't a lot of those opportunities out there. And also with what Chris Finch and Tim Conley and this whole organization, Alex Rodriguez and Mark Laurie, Glenn Taylor, like what everyone has built in terms of the culture is they are changing the franchise into a place that is attractive to players to stay. And so I do think that really did factor in to what Mike Conley was doing in far as his decision making. If Mike Conley was making this decision 5 or 6 years ago on the Timberwolves, I could absolutely see him saying, "Man, this isn't for me. Get me out of here. I'm going to go somewhere else and get a bigger contract and get a better situation." But the Timberwolves have built a place that players like to be, and that is not the norm around here. So it was a good question and a good observation from Ryan, because there have not been a lot of players who have taken less money to stay in the history of the Wolves organization. Now one of their most important players is taking less money to stay, and it's because of the environment, it's because of how competitive that they are, and because of the chances that he has to win here. And that's just a unique portion of this franchise's history that we're in right now.
Good question. Good answer. Hey, thanks to everyone. And thanks, Jon. It's a great time for Talk North to have the best Timberwolves show in existence at a time when the Timberwolves are at their absolute best and most interesting. So thanks to everyone. Thanks to Jon. Thanks to Brandon. Thank you all for listening. Thank you to our sponsors. We'll be back next week with another interesting week in Timberwolves season.